Ben, I have a question for you, Ben. If you were to choose one type of chicken nugget that you could have for the rest of your life, where would it be from?
If I had to choose,
Yeah, one type of nugget.
unfortunately, if I only had to choose one, I think I'd have to choose McDonald's. Not because they're my favorite, but because they're the cheapest.
I fully agree. McDonald's nuggies, they just have the right feeling.
McDonald's is classic.
Yeah, me and Michael were talking about it earlier.
They're just crisp.
Like it's definitely not the best nuggie, but you know. Anyways,
something about them that just makes them special.
Yeah. Well, welcome to Travelers Tips and Tales. My name is Jacob.
I'm Mike.
And I'm Ben.
And today we're going to talk about some of our favorite spells in D&D. Spells are a part of what not every, but some classes can do. And there's it's kind of like their big abilities, but there's certain things to spells that everyone should probably know firsthand. Michael, if you want to go into that a little bit.
Yeah. Sorry, repeat that? What?
Just like rulings,
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I was a little bit spaced out there for a moment.
That's good.
So spells are going to have a few major points to them. So you're always going to have a casting time for spells, whether that be one action, one bonus action, a reaction. Those are going to be probably the most common ones. Mostly it's going to be action or bonus action, but you do have a few reactions, as well as some that may cost a minute of your time or an hour of your time. And some spells actually have a couple different casting times that you can choose, and they have different effects depending on the time you take to cast it. There's also a way that you can cast it using a ritual casting, but that gets a little bit more complicated, and it's kind of situational because you have to have the ability to ritual cast. You also have range. Range is going to be how far your spell can go. It's exactly what it sounds like. It's the range of the spell. Spells can range from touch, where you have to physically be touching something when you cast the spell for it to have the effect that you want, or it might be 30 feet, 60 feet, 150 feet. There's various ranges that a spell could be, and there's other things that could affect the range as well. Next is components. And components, there are three major categories. There's verbal, somatic, and material. Verbal is going to be the words that you're using to cast the spell. You have to say something for the spell to work. Somatic is going to be the hand motions. Think about how in Harry Potter you move your wand. That's an example of a somatic component. The last one is material, and material components are usually widely varying in what they could be. There's some that are a diamond worth 1,000 gold pieces, and usually if it's worth gold, it's going to be consumed when you cast the spell. So if you want to cast the spell again, you have to have multiple of those components.
You gotta collect supplies for them all.
Yeah, but some of the spells, they might have just random things. So right here, I'm looking at one where you need soft clay. And that clay is not going to be consumed, but it's there as something that you have to use to cast that spell. And the final one is going to be duration. Once again, exactly how it sounds. That's going to be how long the spell lasts. Some of them are instantaneous, meaning they go away as soon as the effect has taken place. Some of them might be a minute or 10 minutes. And some of them, you will also notice, have the trait of concentration, where you have to continue concentrating on the spell. You can't concentrate on two spells at a time. I believe there might be an ability to sidetrack that. I don't remember off the top of my head.
I didn't think so for the longest time, but I think there
it's an item. Okay.
An item, yeah.
I believe it is an iron stone that allows you to do that.
Yeah.
Ah, yes. And so if you are using a spell that requires concentration and you take damage from any source, then that will require you to make a Constitution saving throw to see if you can keep up the concentration or if you lose it and the spell kind of dies out. So those are going to be the major things that are related to the spells.
Yeah. Thank you very much for that, Michael. That was very nice. But so yeah, so now that you guys got a kind of a little bit of a debrief on the basics of how to cast and what you need for spells, and as a player, from a player standpoint, knowing the ranges and all that stuff. So now we can kind of go into some of our favorite spells. So my first favorite spell, one of my favorite overall spells in D&D 5th edition, is the spell called Find Familiar. It is a first level conjuration spell, and it is one of those ritual spells that Michael was talking about that's kind of a little different. And so yeah, conjuration is kind of like the school of magic where you conjure things, so you make them out of kind of like nothing. It has a casting time of 1 hour and a range of 10 feet. The range doesn't really matter for this one specifically, though. It has all 3 verbal, somatic, and material components. The material components are 10 gold pieces worth of charcoal, incense, or something like that, in a brass brazier. So, you gotta pay some money for this one. And it's instantaneous. And the only class that this is available for is the wizard, which is why I like it a lot, because wizard's one of my favorite spellcasters. But anyways, so you cast a spell, and you basically get to make a familiar. And your familiar can be anything from basic types of animals. Most of them have very small HP. They're very squishy. But the ones that it gives, for example, are bat, cat, crab, frog, or a toad, a hawk, lizard, octopus, owl, a poisonous snake, not a steak, fish, rat, raven, seahorse, spider, or a weasel. But of course, you can kind of use another animal just for aesthetic. Most DMs don't really have a problem with that. And basically, the gist of the spell is that you, as your character, can go in, it can tap into the mind of the familiar, and you can see through its eyes and hear through its ears. And you can still feel from your body, if someone were to poke you in the face, you would feel it as your character, but you see and hear through your familiar. So I, with my character, used it as the perfect reconnaissance little creature, because I had a little lizard. His name was Zuck. But so yeah, it's just a really helpful. I think it's a very good utility spell, a very helpful thing, and it lasts forever until it dies, at least, and then you have to cast the spell again to get a new one. But the familiar can't attack or anything like that. He's a peaceful boy, but you can cast any other spells that have the touch range through that familiar. So it's kind of cool. So my character, he had the spell Identify, which lets you identify things in its touch, and so I could identify stuff on another person if they didn't notice my lizard. Kind of cool thing, I like to think. And so yeah, you can basically telepathically communicate with your familiar up to 100 feet. It's pretty neat. And so yeah, it's just a really good reconnaissance thing. I really enjoy it. What do you guys think about it?
I think that a really cool thing that you can do with Find Familiar that I don't think it explicitly says in the spell, but it does mention this on a few of the creatures. Some creatures can serve you as a familiar, even though the spell doesn't specify them, like the imp. It's a devil. You can have that as your familiar. You can find creatures in the wild that you can convince to serve as your familiar as well, which gives them, I think, a lot more personality.
Yeah, it does say actually instead of them being of the beast creature type, you can choose between either celestial, fey, or fiend. Mine specifically, I believe, was a celestial, because I thought it sounded cool. But yeah, so they're technically, and you can make them have little attributes that make them maybe they have horns because they're a fiend or something like that. But yeah, I think you could. I think they can't attack or anything like they normally would be able to, though.
Yeah, that spell I've noticed was very versatile for you, just because I mean, if you guys can imagine, in the movies or TV shows where somebody's infiltrating a building to steal something, they're checking on like the cameras and stuff that are all throughout the corridors. That was essentially what you were able to do with that spell. I mean, you were able to check
the
corridors.
Camera could move.
Yeah, the camera could move.
Albeit it didn't have the best perception skill, so it wasn't that great at looking at stuff, and it also didn't have the best stealth skill, so it wasn't really good at going unnoticed. But it got the job done for the most part. Also, another thing I didn't bring up, you can also cast it. So say you've cast it before and you have your familiar, you can cast it again, and you can change your familiar into another one of any of those creatures. So you're not like locked to one of the creatures. You don't have to like say you have like a cat or something, and it's your familiar, and then you're like, oh man, I need a bird familiar because I gotta have him fly. You don't have to like stab your cat to be able to cast it again. No, you could just you can change them into, you just cast the spell again, so it takes a spell slot, unless because you're a wizard, you have the ritual. That's a part of the wizard features. You cast it as a ritual, so it doesn't actually use the spell slot. But for me, in my case, I was a rogue, so I did have to use the spell slot for it every time. But so yeah, you could change it so you're not like locked into one creature the whole time.
Yeah, and that's always beneficial too. Like you said, sometimes you might need it to fly, sometimes you might need it to burrow, and some creatures can do that.
It does take an hour though to do it. So while you're doing that, the rest of the party's just hanging out. if you're like in the middle of an adventure, it's best to do like the beginning or end of the day.
Or you could do what Jacob did, which is his familiar died while in a dungeon, and he started setting doors on fire to get enough charcoal to bring him back, which alerted everything in the dungeon that he was there.
To be fair, to give myself some credit here, I had a bit of charcoal going into the dungeon. It just so happened to be a never-ending dungeon, and poor little Zuck died a couple times. It only
lasted 6 sessions.
Yeah, Anyways, that's just some stuff about my favorite spell, Find Familiar. Michael, what's one of your favorite spells?
Yeah, so last week, or a few weeks ago, no, it was last week. Last week we talked about backstories, and you guys got to hear a backstory about a character of mine named Landers. And Landers, this spell has really been key for Landers lately. And I believe, if I remember correctly, it was the very first spell he cast in game. So it's definitely become a staple of his, and this spell that I'm referring to is Windwalk. Windwalk is a 6th level transmutation spell. Now, if you don't know what transmutation is, the school of transmutation is referring to being able to manipulate the physical properties of items and or people. Common idea of that represents it is, whether or not you believe it, water to wine, that whole thing, or copper into gold, different things. So Windwalk is probably one of my favorite spells. It costs a minute to cast it with a range of 30 feet. It takes verbal, somatic, and material components, and the materials for that are going to be fire and holy water. And the duration lasts for 8 hours, and it is only for druids. Only druids can innately learn this spell. The spell description, let me just go ahead and give you guys that. It says, you and up to 10 willing creatures you can see within range assume a gaseous form for the duration, appearing as wisps of cloud. While in this cloud form, a creature has a flying speed of 300 feet and has resistance to damage from non-magical weapons. The only actions a creature can take in this form are the dash action or to revert back to its normal form. Reverting takes a minute, during which time a creature is incapacitated and cannot move. Until the spell ends, a creature can revert to cloud form, which also requires the 1 minute transformation. If a creature is in cloud form and flying when the effect ends, the creature descends 60 feet per round for 1 minute until it lands, which it does safely. If it can't land after a minute, the creature falls the remaining distance.
I did not know you. So you can cast it on them. They go into cloud, and then they can go back to not cloud, and then back into cloud.
Yeah, as long as it's all within that 8 hours.
I didn't know that. I thought once you went no cloud, you couldn't go back.
No, yeah, you can revert back and forth as long as you're within those 8 hours. Yeah, and one of the biggest reasons that we have used this spell over and over and over again, I mean, you heard it here, guys. It's fast travel. Flying speed of 300 feet, and you can dash. So if you're dashing with every action, that's 600 feet every 6 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
We've done the math. We've used the math. It is 545 miles that you can travel in 8 hours. It is second only to teleportation in my book. Well, maybe transport via plants. I don't know. I haven't looked into that spell too much. But,
for another day.
Yeah.
The future of Landers.
It's a really, really solid spell. And you could be flying and just it ends. You just safely fall. It's almost like you're getting fast travel and feather fall all in
at
one.
the same time.
It's fantastic.
If someone asked Featherfall and teleportation to have a baby, it would be Windwalk.
And you would think, okay, maybe that's cool. Maybe you could use it for like you and like a few people. No, it's you and 10 others.
10 people?
That is insane to me.
That's crazy.
Given you have to get yourself and 10 people all within 30 feet of you. But, you know.
All right, guys, time for our cloud transformation group hug.
Now, this is not something that is required, at least by most DMs, but Ben asked me at one point to put in a little bit of thought to how my characters cast each of their spells, like what their somatic component is, how they kind of move their hands or how they say the words that they do.
Yeah.
And I decided that Landers gathers everyone in a circle around him and basically walks them through a breathing technique. And as they're taking these deep breaths on their exhales, you can see through their nose, they're starting to turn into mist.
Jeez, dude, that's so cool.
Don't forget, you also make them hold hands.
Yes,
yes. We hold hands.
They do hold hands.
You make everyone hold hands in a circle and breathe together.
Maybe with every episode, we'll just tell the viewers, the listeners, one more thing about Landers, and they'll slowly understand more and more why he's the most wholesome character I have ever heard of in my entire life.
Now, Ben,
I've got plans for Landers. It'll be great.
I do want to ask you a question, though, Ben. If you had to guess, how many random encounters have we probably avoided while using this spell?
Well, we're in the desert, so less, right?
Well, we haven't taken heat stroke.
The desert is very populated.
Well,
thank you.
Nowadays,
it's just populated by horrible monsters that love fire and heat.
Well, and thankfully we're not getting heat stroke either.
A huge portion of the war that's going on.
Yeah.
You're definitely skipping over a huge portion of that war.
Yeah, it's helped us traverse through the Underdark as well.
A little bit.
It's been quite helpful. Suffice it to say, I recommend it because fast travel.
It's pretty great.
Well, as fun as that spell is,
it is.
I think I have one to top any spell. My spell is a first level conjuration spell.
As it should be.
It is called Grease. And there is a material component for this spell, all right? The material component, because there is material, verbal, and somatic. Material component is a bit of pork rind or butter. You grease the floor. That's what you do.
I'm just picturing every wizard
And it
or
lasts for a
sorcerer
minute.
just has a bunch of sticks of butter in their pack, and they just start pulling them out, and they just start rubbing the floor with it. You're just like, what are you doing?
Which I might say could be very inconvenient in a desert.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it's like, we're in the forest. What are you doing? Like,
the reason I love this spell so much, I had a character. He was a dwarf wizard. His name was Berend Ungart. And Grease was his favorite spell. Yes, Grease was his favorite spell. He was in a party with nothing but melee characters, and even he was a melee-based wizard. He would carry around a battle axe and wear armor.
Yeah.
So whenever they got into the thick of it, if there was a group of enemies or even just one enemy that they couldn't really seem to deal with, he would just cast Grease on the floor, and they would slip and slide and fall, because that's what Grease does.
Mm-hmm.
It causes people to slip and fall all over the place. But because my DM allowed me to be very creative, and I encourage you all to do this as well, we created a combo with this party.
A wombo
where
combo.
I would cast Grease, someone would light the Grease on fire, and then someone would either create water via a spell, or they would take a bucket of water and throw it on it to create a massive grease fire explosion.
Yep.
And it would pretty much take care of anyone that was slipping and sliding all over the floor.
Along with anybody within 100 yards.
And they would all know, definitely.
Why cast Fireball when you could just cast Grease in a couple of extra actions? With a bucket of water and a fire bolt.
And the best part about that, the best part about Grease is because it's a first level spell, eventually Berend was able to learn it and cast it at will without using any spell slots. Berend was able to cast Grease whenever he wanted. That combo was on demand.
Fantastic.
In the middle of combat, or even not in combat, he would just cast Grease.
That is
because
great.
Why not?
He'd walk up to a bunch of enemies.
Oddly effective.
He'd walk up to some enemies and he'd go, "You boys look like you need to have a little slidey time. Let me introduce you to Grease."
We went to investigate a town up in the mountains, and they were being attacked by Yetis, and they were climbing on the rooftops. So Baron just started casting Grease on the rooftops, making them slip and fall and take fall damage, and then the barbarian would run up and just take them out while they're on the ground.
That is great.
And it was that easy. We finished that fight in, I think, like 3 rounds.
Now, Ben, that is a great spell. I agree. Grease is a great spell. But I think I've got a spell up my sleeve that might be just a little bit better. Because what's better than Grease than something that could stop Grease? That is why one of my favorite spells is the spell called Counterspell. It is a 3rd level abjuration spell, and abjuration magic is mostly like defensive magic, and I think this one is very true to that. So it takes casting time, 1 reaction, which is, so the trigger for this spell is that you see another person, anyone, cast a spell within 60 feet of you, which is the range of the spell. It is only a somatic component, so you don't have to say anything, you don't have to hold anything. It's kind of like in the moment, you just like finger gun or something, you know? And it is instantaneous. And so basically what it does is you stop that person from casting their spell. And I love it so much. So basically, if whatever spell you're trying to counter is 3rd level or lower, it immediately fails. And you could also cast it at higher levels. So the higher level you cast it at, the higher it just instantly fails. And then so it's kind of like a guessing game. So say someone casts a really powerful looking spell, but I don't know what level it is, so I might want to overshoot just to make sure it doesn't work, you know. But if it is below, if the level that you cast counterspell is lower than whatever spell you're trying to counter, if that just so happens to be the truth, don't be so sad yet, because you just have to make a check with your spellcasting ability. So, like intelligence for wizard, charisma for sorcerer or warlock, because those are the only people who get this spell. And you just have to beat 10 plus whatever the spell's level is. So if you cast a counter spell against a 5th level spell, you just have to beat a 15 with your spellcasting ability as a modifier. So it's not too hard, most of the time. But yeah, I really love counterspell.
I will say, to the point of the only classes that can get that spell, bards can get it.
Do bards get it as well?
Well, it's not listed as a bard spell, but bards get an ability once they reach a certain level in their class.
That is true.
They can take 2 spells from any class's spell list.
Yeah.
So bards do have access to counterspell at
my
later
point
levels.
is that the classes that it is available to from the start are sorcerer, warlock, and wizard. But yeah, you prove a good point. Yes, other people. I mean, anyone can get any spell if you can cast spell, because you can take like feats to get spells from other classes. There's ways to get stuff, but yeah. So I just really like counterspell because I'm always the worried caster. I always like to have this guy in my arsenal ready to pop off in case someone looks extra spooky with one of their spells, and I'll just be like, you know what? I'm just gonna say no to that one. Thank you. I'll go over here and just thanks. Just like I'd rather that didn't happen. Thank you very much. Good day.
Just like, hey, I heard you like spells. So do I. But not
I really
that
like
much.
it because sometimes, what if this encounter hasn't happened yet, but I think it'd be really cool if what if one dude cast a spell and then one dude was like counterspell, and then one other dude cast counterspell on that guy's counterspell, and then another person from the party, so not the same guy because he doesn't have any more reaction, right? He uses reaction. Another person casts counterspell. It's like, whoa, a whole bunch of stuff. It'd be really cool. Just like all these spell slots for one spell to either go through or not go through.
Yeah, I think the best use of counterspell I've ever seen, it was actually in a Critical Role episode from their first campaign, and it was towards the end when they were fighting Vecna. Sam Riegel, who plays the bard, counterspelled at 9th level.
Spoiler alert, bro.
Hey, it's been out on the YouTubes for probably a year and a half now, so maybe longer. 2 years.
I still haven't seen it, Michael.
I haven't seen it either. I'm probably the biggest critter in this podcast.
Yeah, but I
watch campaign
really
2,
watch
though.
campaign 2. So
yeah, I don't watch campaign 1.
Yeah, but I do watch campaign 1, and I haven't gotten that far because I don't have that kind of time, Michael.
Ben watches campaign 1, but he's like a couple episodes in.
I tell you what, man, I apologize for spoiling, but I didn't say
you didn't spoil. Yeah, you didn't spoil much. You just said that they will fight.
I just said that they will fight and that a 9th level counterspell gets cast.
Yeah, which is the most cautious way to cast counterspell.
Yes,
I don't care what you're doing; it's not happening. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Have a nice day. Anyways, that's one of my favorite spells. I really like counterspell. It's always a good one to have in my arsenal. Michael, what's one of yours? Another one from you.
Yeah, so the next spell that I have that I haven't ever used it, but I really like the idea of it, and I have plans to use it for a character I'm currently playing as. So
I'm excited.
This spell is Swift Quiver. It is a ranger spell, and it is a 5th level transmutation. It has a casting time of 1 bonus action, a range of touch, which would make sense. You're mostly going to be using it for yourself. And the components are verbal, somatic, and material. The materials being a quiver containing at least 1 piece of ammunition. So it's going to be an arrow of some sorts.
Or
And-
bolt.
or a
Maybe?
bolt, yes.
I don't know.
And
Cool.
the duration is up to 1 minute. It is a concentration spell, so if you take damage, you will have to try to maintain that concentration. The spell description reads as this. You transmute your quiver so it produces an endless supply of non-magical ammunition which seems to leap into your hand when you reach for it. On each of your turns until the spell ends, you can use a bonus action to make 2 attacks with a weapon that uses ammunition from the quiver. Each time you make such a ranged attack, your quiver magically replaces the piece of ammunition you used with a similar piece of non-magical ammunition. Any pieces of ammunition created by the spell disintegrate when the spell ends. If the quiver leaves your possession, the spell ends. I mean, need I say more? It allows you to attack twice using your bonus action, which you usually can't use to attack anyways.
Mm-hmm.
Unless you have special class abilities, which Rangers typically cannot do that. So that is the highest level spell that Rangers can get, though, is 5th level. So you will get
so
it
this is like
further
late game.
along. Well, no, I think Rangers still get their spells in the same time frame as other classes. So you would get a 5th level spell probably around, I want to say, level 10 if I remember correctly, 10 or 11. And it's so good because I'm planning on using it with a character that I have that is currently a bard, but they are going to be transitioning at some point into fighter and then transitioning some point into rogue. And I am building essentially the ultimate archer. However, I'm starting to think that the way that game is going, he might just be a bard.
Actually, sorry there, Michael, but Rangers, they progress like other half casters. They get 5th level spells at 17th level. So and they eventually they get as high as 2 spell slots for it too. So
yeah, I know that Rangers didn't get very many of them. Rangers are not a spell-based class whatsoever.
Yeah,
spells are just kind of used to help.
Category.
Yeah, spells are something that Rangers use to just kind of buff the damage that they can do, just so that way they can kind of keep up with everybody. And even then, Rangers are way below the line that they need to be at to be on par with everybody else.
Unless they're maybe the revised version.
The revised version is better. Not great, but better.
Better. There's 50 is definitely still broken in many ways.
Yeah.
And the revised is not as broken.
But yeah, Swift Quiver.
So I like how it turned into like an ad for Swift Quiver at the end. It's like, yeah, take Swift Quiver. shoot a lot of arrows really quickly.
You know how I do, man.
All right. So I'd like to touch on a spell now.
Yeah, no problem. Go ahead.
I believe firmly in combinations between different spells, which is why this next spell is so important to me. Because it's the thing I neglected to mention about Grease. The thing that's very, very important about Grease. It's not a concentration spell.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which means it just lasts for a minute, and you don't have to do anything to maintain it. This next spell is a concentration spell. And it pairs very well with Grease.
Which means that you can cast both of these at the same time. Both of these can be in effect, right?
Yes. Just one turn after another. The spell I would like to talk about is Heat Metal. Let's say, for example, you cast Grease on someone, and even if they don't fall over, they are standing in the grease, okay? And they're holding a metal weapon, or their armor is made of metal, anything made of metal.
Mm-hmm.
That's where this spell comes in. It is a 2nd level transmutation. Takes an action to cast with a range of 60 feet, which is also Grease's range. It has verbal, somatic, and material components, and the material component is a piece of iron and a flame, any flame, and its concentration up to a minute. You choose a manufactured metal object, such as a metal weapon or a suit of heavy or medium metal armor that you can see within range. You cause the object to glow red hot. Any creature in physical contact with the object takes 2d8 fire damage when you cast the spell. Until the spell ends, you can use a bonus action on each of your subsequent turns to cause this damage again. If a creature is holding or wearing the object and takes the damage from it, the creature must succeed on a Constitution saving throw or drop the object if it can. If it doesn't drop the object, it has disadvantage on attack rolls and ability checks until the start of your next turn. And if you cast the spell at higher levels, you get an additional d8 for each level above second level. So what that means, boys, is that there is a pool of flammable grease underneath a person, and they are suddenly burning alive in a suit of armor they can't take off, or the metal in their hand, the weapon in their hand, is suddenly burning hot, and they have to drop it into this pool of grease.
So either they're being toasted alive,
or they're being toasted alive.
Yeah.
Because even if they do, even if it is their armor, if they're wearing boots, metal boots, if they're wearing a suit of plate metal armor and no one can hit them, suddenly they're burning alive from the inside and out. I love this combination so much.
He was my biggest takeaway from that spell description reading right there, Benjamin. Is a medium or heavy. So my precious studded leather armor is totally fine. There is metal in it, but it's okay.
Yeah, your studded leather is totally fine. However,
not enough metal to heat up.
Grease, all you have to do, you know that flame that's in my hand in order to cast heat metal in the first place?
Oh yeah.
You just throw that into the grease.
But my armor's good.
See, yeah, your armor's fine. It's just your weapon you have to worry about. You're holding a dagger? Are you holding a scimitar? Are you holding any piece of metal?
Well, actually, a bow. Wood. What up? It's a bow.
See, now if there's anything to take away, if there's anything to take away from Ben describing this combination of spells, it's that Ben is psychotic and has need for help.
If anything,
Michael, I think Ben.
I think if anything, it's that I should never be allowed to play a spellcaster.
If anything, it's that you should always be allowed to play a spellcaster. As long as you're on my side, I'm cool.
Oh man, that PvP session in a little bit is going to get interesting.
Oh yeah.
Oh wow. I am playing a druid in that game.
Oh yeah.
And we are pirates.
And
which means that the spell tsunami is going to play a huge part.
Oh no.
If we're raiding a coastal town, it's just if we're fighting another ship, oh yeah, tsunami or storm of vengeance.
That one's pretty brutal too. But you brought up that your amazing spell grease is not concentration, correct? I've got another spell that you would think should probably have concentration, but for some reason doesn't. It is one of my favorite spells. It's called Spiritual Weapon. And now, take it from me. I'm not normally a guy that likes to take non-utility spells. I really like utility spells, but this one is just too good not to talk about. It's for clerics. I'm pretty sure it's just clerics for the most part. I don't think. I mean, I guess bards can get it, But as a casting time of 1 bonus action, you heard that, a bonus action, so you still get your sacred flame off with your action, which is great. And you have a range of 60 feet. It has components of verbal and somatic, so no material needed, and it lasts for 1 minute. And basically, you create it's a 2nd level evocation spell as well. And evocation is just pretty much what they lumped all the damaging spells into. All the really good damaging spells. That's where all the evocation goes. But you basically create a floating spectral weapon of your choice. It can look like whatever you want. My cleric particularly had a book because she was a nerd. But so you make a spiritual weapon of whatever you want, and it floats in the air. and you'll whack people with it. It has a range of 5 feet, so you could, but it doesn't have to be with you, right? So you could be in the back lines, but your spiritual weapon up there in the front lines, whacking dudes. It's great, and it deals 1d8 plus your spellcasting modifier. So most spells don't add to the damage, like a finite amount of damage on top of what you roll, but this one does. And every turn thereafter you can use your bonus action to move it up to 20 feet if you would like to, and repeat the attack. You could attack again, and it is not concentration. So you could do this, and you could have like a buff spell up, or whatever else you want to do, because literally this doesn't stop like anything. You could cast a cantrip, because the first time you cast it, you can't cast another like spell. You have to cast a cantrip, right? Because that's just how spell casting works.
Yeah.
But every turn afterwards, you can cast like guiding bolt, or cure wounds, or healing word, or bless, or
grease.
or cleric. So no, but you can do all this other stuff. Oh man, it's just so nice, because like sometimes when I'm playing cleric, I feel like, I know that I'm helping, but it's hard to see it because I don't get to roll the damage and tell the DM, take this damage to feel like I'm progressing the fight. But this is a really good way for me to do that and make my little rogue heart happy, my inside of my rogue heart happy, that just likes to deal damage. And still be able to do utility. I can still buff and all that good stuff. And yeah, that's why I like spiritual weapon. It's really good. Also, you can cast it at higher levels. I almost forgot to mention. And for every level higher, you get an extra D8 damage per hit. You heard that right, folks.
Yeah, so I do want to bring up the fact that I think it's slightly ironic that spiritual weapon is in your top 3 spells. And this is purely because of the fact that, and here's a little bit of a callback to a previous episode where we had an eye for adventure. You gotta listen to it, go listen.
Yeah.
One of your biggest characters ever died because of spiritual weapon.
This is true. It whacked me real good. Yeah. But sometimes you just got to be in the other end of it to realize, wow, that spell's really effective.
Yeah, sometimes you roll really bad and it hits your teammate and kills them, but sometimes it's really good.
That spell really whacks people good. And she still had an action to guiding bolt me. It was so perfect.
Yeah, it was
all in
great.
one turn. Wow, what a wombo combo.
Clerics, man.
Oh man. But yeah, I really like spiritual weapon. There's so much that you can, I don't know, I feel like it helps clerics feel like they're doing more during combat, and it's just kind of broken at the same time. So, a range of 60 feet, like they easily could have just been like 30 feet, People would have been like, that's reasonable. But nah, 60. I could be hecka far away and I'd just be like, whack. Anyways, Michael, you got another spell up your sleeve?
Yeah, so sticking with my theme here of high-level spells being my favorite.
And my theme of low-level spells.
Yeah, you both have 3 low-level spells, and I have 3. Well, one of them is kind of a mid-range at 5, but 6 and 8, they're both pretty high.
Are the best.
Which, yes, my last spell that I'm going to be talking about today is an 8th level spell. It is an enchantment. It's called Power Word Stun. I recently learned about this spell this weekend, and I love it. It is so good. The casting time on it is 1 action. It has a range of 60 feet. The components are purely verbal, so you don't need to worry about being able to move your hands or worry about having materials with you. You just have to say a word, and you can do it. A certain power word. The duration is instantaneous. Now, I know earlier I said instantaneous for a duration would usually refer to the effects just being done really quickly, but that is not the case for this spell. At least it doesn't have to be.
It has the potential.
The description for this spell, and the reason why it's so strong: you speak a word of power that can overwhelm the mind of one creature you can see within range, leaving it dumbfounded. If the target has 150 hit points or fewer, it is stunned. Otherwise, the spell has no effect. The stunned target must make a Constitution saving throw at the end of each of its turns. On a successful save, this stunning effect ends. The way that reads is great. That means until they make their con save, which could potentially be never, they're stunned.
Awful.
You could potentially stun like a low-level goblin and just leave them. They're never getting out.
They starve to death.
Yeah.
Adventurers years down the line walk into a cave and there's just a skeleton still standing there, unable to move.
And here's the thing. Yeah, you're going to go up against a lot of things at this level when you're able to cast 8th level spells that are going to have more than 150 hit points. But at the same time, if they don't, or if you weaken them enough to where this will work, you can just start whacking them over and over again. Some spells like this that would stun an enemy, the stunning would be done as soon as they take damage. Once again, that's not the case with this spell. I love this spell so much because it's so powerful.
DMs be warned.
It costs a lot, but it is so powerful. It is available to Bard, Sorcerer, Warlock, and Wizard.
Oh, that's so many.
So good. And Bard is listed, so you don't even have to use your ability to take it.
You can just take the spell on your own terms.
Yeah, it is fantastic.
You thought Monk's Stunning Strike was bad.
Well, here's the thing, though. Monk's Stunning Strike you can do at low level.
Well, listen. Stop bagging on Stunning Strikes, okay?
I'm not bagging on it. Stunning Strike is a great ability. Power Word Stun is fantastic. It just has a very high spell cost because you have to be able to cast an 8th level spell and be willing to expend that spell slot.
I feel like, I mean, it makes sense that it doesn't have material components, but I feel like a spell that OP should have something, you know?
Yeah, like maybe a diamond worth 1,000 gold or something.
Yeah, something. Like, you don't even have to bring it out or anything. You could just say the word and then it, like, you know, like, disintegrates in your bag or something. I don't know.
I would even debate that just losing the ability to speak for a minute would also be fair compensation.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah.
That'd be balancing. So then you couldn't, that'd be interesting because then, you can't cast other verbal spells.
Yeah, imagine casting Power Word Stun and then next turn casting Power Word Kill.
Yeah, jeez.
Oh, man.
Well, you know they're under 150.
Well, and so Power Word Kill, they have to be under 100.
Yeah.
So just let a couple people whack them a little bit and then you're good.
It's like a 2/3 chance, you know? Yeah.
But then again, you either let people whack them.
Yeah, you could let them whack.
Or you spend a 9th level spell slot to cast Power Word Kill.
You let the cleric do a couple of spiritual weapon whacks, you feel me?
With Guiding Bolt.
At the same time, because they cast spiritual weapon last turn.
Now here's a combo that I bet just came into my head, just like it probably just came into your guys's. Power Word Stun, and then Ben, you could pull out the grease and heat metal.
They literally can't even leave. They're stuck there. Hey, Michael, whatever your character is, better get out of there.
The moment I saw that up on the list.
Oh, man.
That combo was already in there, man.
It's such a deadly spell, man.
It is brutal.
Now, one other spell that I love.
Yeah.
Also used frequently by one Berend Ungart.
Hit me with it, Benjamin.
All right. there's a little bit of backstory here as to why this spell is so good. Berend Ungart worships a god of secrecy. Not a lot of people know that because it's secret.
That's fair.
And in his spell book, he keeps many secrets that he doesn't want anyone to know. He writes them down in the margins. He keeps them as his hidden notes. And every morning, he casts a particular spell in order to make sure that no one can read that spell book. And that spell is known as Illusory Script.
Okay.
It's a first level illusion spell, and it can be cast as a ritual, which is why it is so good for him. And because it was never really elaborated on, a ritual adds 10 minutes to the casting time, but does not cause a spell slot.
Yes.
Which is incredible. It takes a minute to cast. It is a touch-based spell. It has somatic and material components. The material is a lead-based ink worth at least 10 gold, which the spell consumes. So it is expensive to cast this every morning, but it works for him. It lasts for 10 days.
Oh, gosh.
There you go. Wait, so he casts it every day? Even though it lasts 10 days? Oof. No, that's paranoid. I don't even think my character.
You write on parchment, paper, or some other suitable writing material and imbue it with potent illusion that lasts for the duration. To you and any creatures you designate when you cast the spell, which in Baradin's case is no one, the writing appears as normal, written in your hand, and conveys whatever meaning you intended when you wrote the text. To all others, which is everyone, the writing appears as if it were written in an unknown or magical script that is unintelligible. Alternatively, you can cause the writing to appear to be an entirely different message, written in a different hand and language, though the language must be one you know. Should the spell be dispelled, the original script and the illusion both disappear, meaning they go away forever. But a creature with true sight can read the hidden message. So, what Berend would do every day, since he ran a business and he was also a very successful builder of castles and fortresses, he was a very successful architect. He had a lot of money to his name.
Good for him.
So every day, he would cast this spell. And every day, first thing in the morning, he would recast the spell so that the duration would reset.
Yeah.
So that anything he knew he wrote would be in there, just in case.
He'd be safe for 10 days.
Yeah.
Yes. If he ever lost his spellbook, he had 10 days to recover it. Or if he ever died, his secrets would still be secret for a little while after he died, in the hopes that someone accidentally destroys his spellbook.
Which might be long enough for someone to, like flip through and be like, oh, there's nothing in here, and then never look at it again.
Exactly.
Box it in their attic, and his secrets are safe forever.
Yes, exactly. And due to the nature of the secrets involved, it's very important that no one ever finds them. And because of the nature in which he uses this particular spell, no one can steal the spells from his spellbook either. Because he would also write all of his spells with that special ink, adding on the additional time and the additional price, but for this added secrecy.
It's worth it.
He was a very paranoid man.
I love it, though. I love it.
He would also cast arcane lock on every door in his entire business, and he would only give out one password to each person that worked and lived in that building, and they all had a password to a different door, so they could only ever come in from that door.
That's great.
So that he would know. And he also set up alarms all over everywhere he went. He was a very paranoid man.
He was. There's nothing wrong with that, though.
But a successful one.
Yeah. He's got what it took. Anyways, I think that might be
I miss playing Berend.
I think that might be it for this specific episode of Travelers, Tips, and Tales. I don't think we have any patrons at the moment. Right?
No, we do not.
Yeah.
What a sad statement to have
once
to throw
we
out
do,
for those of you who are interested in our Patreon,
They
Traveler
might be
Ben,
shout
me,
out.
myself, runs the Patreon and is in charge of getting their rewards to you. So, depending on the tier, you get early access to our videos and content. You get exclusive homebrew content, homebrewed by me, or maybe one of those two if they ever decide to actually do it.
Hey,
Wow. Wow.
Not throwing shade, just mentioning you guys are not
All right,
usually the DMs.
hey, calm down over here.
And you can get shouted out in our videos. and hey, you guys do everything else. I'm not mad.
We use the items. I'm cool with it.
You can also, yeah, and you guys can also gain the special and unique ability to talk to any one of us or all of us every month. At any time, well, not any time, but any time that works for all of us.
Yeah, we'll schedule it. Summons
so
us.
if you're interested, go ahead and check it out.
We'll have our people talk
sleeping.
to your people, which means we'll have Ben talk to you.
One of us, yeah. But yeah. I think that's it.
What was
Anyone else have anything to say?
did you let them know about our social medias?
Yeah, we are on Instagram at Travelers Tips and Tales, on Twitter at Tips Tales, Tumblr, we have a Tumblr at Travelers Tips and Tales, Patreon is at Travelers Tips and Tales, and we also have an email
We do have
at travelerstipsandtales@gmail.com. Feel free to email us whatever you'd like. We would appreciate it if it was any ideas that you want for us to talk about on our podcast. But we'll accept some other questions as well.
Yeah,
But,
Ben is the typical person for our social media, but we all kind of look at it from time to time. Yeah. Me and Jake will also make sure that we're responding as well.
Yeah, if you want to ask Michael or I or even Ben a specific question, you could just say like to Traveler Jake or Mike or whatever, and we'll get back to you. But also, we also have our good friends at Forgotten Path Games. Ben, if you want to talk about them a little bit more.
Forgotten Path Games. What is there to talk about? They're an amazing game store in a location in which we are also in. And they have lots of cool stuff. And if you also happen to be in a similar location to Forgotten Path Games, you should definitely check them out. Quarantine has been hard on local business all over, and they are still open despite everything, and it is always good to help support local business. And so if you are interested, you can always go down there and check them out. You can find them on Facebook, and I believe they also have an Instagram. Although I don't know that off the top of my head.
Do they still have their promotion going? Their 20%?
Which promotion would that be, Michael?
I believe
they do have that promotion going because it's not a promotion. That is just how they operate business.
What?
Special orders are 20% off. Yes, if they don't have it in store, you can always go in and they can order it for you for 20% off.
I'm gonna be honest, Ben.
You didn't know that, Michael.
I'm gonna be honest, Ben. Last session, I thought that we were just talking about that because it was like a special promotion they were doing.
We could just call it a
that's
promotion.
Just the thing. If you want me to talk about special things they're doing, what they are starting to do is having miniature painting competitions every month.
Ooh.
And the winner of said miniature painting competition gets a very special miniature.
Ooh. I like that.
I happened to enter the most recent contest. However, I'd never entered my actual finished product, so I probably will not win in any way, shape, or form.
Ooh, spicy.
But that just means that anyone else who enters has an even better chance of winning because I have not managed to finish my project.
Competitor.
Yeah.
Competitor.
I do also want to mention, on a slightly different topic, getting away a little bit from the store there, we are also on YouTube. We post all these episodes to YouTube as well at Travelers Tips and Tales. In the future, maybe near future, maybe not so near future. We're still working some things out. We're going to start getting you guys some more videos, some different styles where Ben will be talking more about lore and just different creation of his world. Whereas I'll be putting out content where I'm trying to show you guys how I go about my process of drawing maps. And who knows, we may do some giveaways in the future where I make maps and give them away.
Yeah. Bunch of cool stuff. Yeah. It'll be all good
I think
stuff.
we're also planning a video where we all dress up as one of our D&D characters and have like a mock battle.
Yeah, that's what I'm really excited about. I wasn't sure if we
That
wanted
was
to
one
tell
that
them
we
or not.
discussed.
I was gonna let
Can I
you guys
just-
decide that.
Can I just dress up
I'll
as
tell
Gerald
them.
again?
If you don't I'm gonna be honest, if you don't stop me from telling them about stuff, I'm gonna keep telling them about stuff. There's nothing you can really do.
I'm okay with that.
Anyways, I think that'll be...
I don't keep secrets. I'm amazed that I'm as good a DM as you claim I am.
Listen,
Anyways,
here's
I
the
think,
thing: you tell secrets, but we all keep them from each other. So
That is true.
Oh yeah, I'm very selective about who I tell secrets to. I'm like, hey, did you hear about Jacob's character? I'm gonna do this next session. It's gonna be great.
I'm aware that you're
And Jacob will
planning
walk into the
something
room
for
and be
my
like, hey,
character.
Jacob, come here real quick. Did you hear about what I'm gonna do to my?
Anyways, I think that's it for this episode.
Sorry.
I think that's all for this episode today. We've been Travelers, Tips, and Tales, and see you next week.
yeah, bye guys.